Hi guys, it's Marshall here, and this is our third episode here in Codependency. It's not who you are. Now, I'm going to start off with a real fundamental premise about codependency. And some of this is my own point of view, my own experience with working with myself and with others, my own research, and in discovering ways to accelerate healing so it doesn't take a lifetime, but it can take maybe months, or maybe just under a couple of years to really reclaimate and transform ourselves. And some of it's based on current science and what we are finding, what others are finding in the research of codependency. And fundamentally, what it really is about attachment. It's about connection to ourselves and to others. And so today we're going to talk about attachment theory, or how attachment plays a role in the way codependency functions for us. Okay? So I'm going to start this off with kind of a premise, or kind of like a college view of what attachment is. There's 4 basic styles of attachment. Okay? The first one is secure. Now, secure attachment is when a child feels like they have a way to influence their parent to give them what they need. That they have figured out a dependable and reliable way to get their needs met, and that the parent is both willing, able, and responsive to the child. And they do it in a consistent and safe, warm, loving manner. This gives them a sense of stability. It's like, oh, this is reliable. I can do with this. I can depend on and trust this individual. So the child learns that they are safe with this individual. And it's typically the primary caregiver that they're responding to. Now, this is where confidence, a sense of love, validation, value can really begin to blossom. Because the child feels safe enough to go out into the world, explore it, and come back. Discuss their discoveries, discuss what they're dealing with what they wrestle with, and then go back into the world, do it again, and come back and get more wisdom and information from the caregiver. They can also be protected. They can be guided by the caregiver and learning how to navigate the world. Now that's an essential thing that we all need. And this is a fundamental thing. This is encoded in our DNA. It's part of being human. When we're born, we emerge attached to the mother by the umbilical cord, and then they cut it. That right there can be traumatic, because suddenly we're autonomous now from the mother's body. We're now dependent on mom feeding us. We're dependent on mom clothing us and protecting us, keeping us warm and safe. Because now we're not in her body. She really doesn't have a whole lot of choice. Obviously the mother has power to do things there, but the child's like, hey, I'm in here. Now I'm out here. It's much more exposed. It's a much different world. There's a lot of different noises and sights and sensations going on. So that can be overwhelming to the nervous system. Effective mothers are going to comfort their child and teach the child's body how to regulate. You'll notice in my work, and you'll notice if you work with me, or when we're going through like my primary course with Foundation, regulation is a constant. We're checking in with our bodies. We're bringing comfort to the nervous system. We're yawning, we're stretching, we're prepping ourselves and conditioning ourselves for stimulus. And we're training our nervous system how to calm itself down. This is fundamental to our mental and emotional health. Well, effective parents, effective caregivers do just that. So it's a very, very important skill. And if we didn't get it, we're going to really struggle with feeling regulated. Now, that's the first attachment style. The second attachment's avoidant. This is where the individual knows that by not having needs or acting like there's nothing wrong or that they don't need anything is the only way they're going to get something from the parent, from the primary caregiver. And this sets us up for being very shut down. I don't need anything. There's nothing I need. I'm good. I'm okay. But inside we're like, I need you. I need connection. I need somebody to hear me. I need somebody to reach out to me. I need to talk about what's happened to me or what I'm feeling. These kind of things. Avoidants feel very, very isolated. They tend to calm down when there is like maybe the primary caregiver is there because now they're physically present. But they don't have a reliable or secure way in voicing what they need. So they act very independent, very strong, but internally they're very scared and very anxious. Now, the third style is anxious attachment. Now, anxious attachments are actually pretty obvious. It's the child that would cry when mom leaves. It's the child that would be clingy when mom returns. It takes them a long time to regulate. It takes them a long time to calm down and to recenter. And it takes them a while to adapt to change. And that's because their nervous system isn't being regulated by the mom. The mom's not teaching the child how to deal with it. The father is not teaching the child how to respond to them. So the child is this is the only way they know how to get their need met. And it's not obviously very effective. It can burn both, everybody involved out of the connection, but that's what's going on for that child. And then there's a fourth one, and it's called disorganized, and this is one that I have dealt with. Disorganized is kind of a combination of avoidant and anxious, and it's where the child feels that they have the need, but they don't know what to do. So they approach the parent, but then they don't do anything. Maybe they just fall on the ground. Maybe they start crying in front of them. But they know they need something with the parent. But they're scared, but they're still going to try, but they don't know what's going to happen, so they're going to go in and out. It's almost like a middle school Valentine's dance where the boy's got this attraction to a girl, and he walks up and he walks away, and he's walking around her and he's watching her, but he's not doing anything, right? That's a good example of disorganized attachment. Disorganized attachment comes from a parent who would show love at some points, but then be very hostile, even abusive at other points towards the child's needs and their requests. So it makes it very, very confusing to them. Narcissistic abuse can fall in the category of disorganized attachment. It can also create the avoidant and obviously the anxious attachment, just depending on the factors that happen in that. Because a lot of these are, happen in a combination of each other. Okay. Now, it is possible to have secure avoidant, secure anxious, and secure disorganized attachment. The reason why is because we've learned that individuals learn that they can get their needs met. They've got this habit they've got to work out inside themselves. But the person they're bonded to is still reliable. And typically you might see this in adult relationships where one is secure and one is anxious, and then they're just working that out. Because the person that's in a secure position is going to have a lot of empathy, capacity, and care to offer that individual, especially if that individual is being very proactive about meeting their needs and understanding what is good for them, and then asking proactively what they need. So they're doing their work, basically. So these four attachment styles are what we all deal with, and they are a product of how we were raised. Now, research, and I'm going to link the sources below so you can validate these for yourself. Just gotta trust me. Go out and definitely determine these things for you. Research has shown that attachment styles are actually a product or a result in the child from the parent. It's not innate to the child. See, I'm not born with disorganized attachment. You were not born with your attachment style. You were born with a need for attachment, a need for bonding, so that you could feel safe in the world, so you had a safe home base to go out and explore the world and come back, and that you could get nurture, attention, identity, guidance and protection from. This is key for every human being in existence. Okay? We are a interdependent species. We're a social species, and we depend on each other to survive. And this is where we start with the mother-child bond and then with the child-father bond. And this kind of spells into the adage that no one person can meet all your needs. It's already built in, see? Mom can't meet all your needs. Dad can't meet all your needs. Your friends can't meet all your needs. But a combination can. And that's why we have community. That's why tribe is important. That's why having a strong social and friend network is critical before we get into the bigger relationships like primary bonding, like in a romantic or sexual relationship, because those have a lot of instability in them. They especially in the dating world, they end and start all the time like this, boom, boom, boom. Well, if we have a solid network of friends, a solid network of support, then that letdown, sometimes that fall, we're caught and we can be nurtured. We have the safe place to go back to, lick our wounds, get regulated, and grow again. Codependency cuts us off from this because we have internalized that we're not lovable. I want to take this from this attachment angle here because it's kind of, I go on rabbit trails, so rabbit trail number 1, but this is really the point of the video too. So it's really not a rabbit trail. I'm just kind of jumping into it because it's here. Based on this research and based on what people or scientists and psychologists are finding with attachment, the parent teaches the child how to feel about their love. Okay? And this is where my angle in this comes in. I'm more and more convinced as I work with myself, as I work with my clients, and as I watch what other individuals like Ross Rosenberg are coming out with, he came out with a concept called self-love deficit disorder as a description for codependency. Self-love deficit. We were not taught how to love ourselves as codependents. So we have a very, we got a big bucket and we got a little love in there. We don't have sufficient love for us because we were not shown how to do that through attachment. Instead, we were shown through disattachment or disorganized, anxious, or avoidant attachment to reject ourselves. That we learned that our needs were somehow wrong. We were given the false identity of being a burden, the false idea that who we are causes people pain, that our love was unwanted, that our bids for affection were rejected. See, growing up in an attachment is normal, right? Well, this is also where we learn how to love and how to express affection, how to request affection. Because a lot of times a bid for connection is offered through a act to connect. And then the reciprocation of that connection is where we feel connected, where we feel valued or validated. When we put out love and it's not accepted, we feel naturally hurt. We feel confused. We could feel rejected. Well, in codependency, when we're dealing with we're dealing with a primary caregiver, or all of them that we've dealt with, they don't actively reciprocate our bids for affection, attention, time, connection, love, then those feelings that come up within us, we mistake them for who we are. We mistake them as a reflection or a value statement about our love, rather than what they really are, which is, I feel this way when you treat me this way. Okay? The brain, and this isn't your fault, by the way, the child brain doesn't have the ability to understand the separation between your mind and theirs. Until you get until about the age of 5 or 6, you start developing this concept called theory of mind. Theory of mind basically states that human beings have the ability to understand that somebody else sees the world differently than they do. Okay? Now, narcissists don't see it that way. See, narcissists actually think that everybody thinks like they do. Well, everybody thinks this way. You ever heard that from one of them? They think that everybody thinks the way they do, and those people who don't are just stupid and wrong. Okay? That's why they're intolerant to feedback. Because, hey man, I think this way. Everybody thinks this way. I'm right. They don't have this ability to conceptualize that other people actually see the world differently, and it is actually valid and real and meaningful. Another challenge here that creates for them is empathy. See, to empathize, we need to feel with the individual, which means we need to understand their context. We need to understand where they're coming from. That requires us to acknowledge that they see the world a certain way. This is why they lack empathy. Okay? So we got theory of mind. We come back to attachment. We come back to not being seen by our primary caregiver because they're not reflecting back to us a positive response to our love, to our affection, to our attention. They don't reflect back to us like, I love this little gift. I love your attention. I'm so grateful you exist. I'm grateful you're here. I see you. I appreciate you. I will always keep you. See, we're not acknowledged. We're going through what's called childhood emotional neglect. We're not acknowledged by them. Instead, we're given messages that communicate that we're only useful when we do a certain thing a certain way. Well, and this doesn't come in overtly. It comes in covertly. It's subtle. So one day you do a nice thing for them. They're like, I really liked that. Thank you. That really made me feel good. Suddenly we feel good. And naturally we would. We're being validated. We're being seen. We're like, Mom or Dad, they liked this. Good. I'm going to do this again. See, now we're starting the habit of pleasing. We're not being valued for who we are in that moment. We're being valued for what we did. But we don't know that. No child would know that. We're not expected to know that. It's not how family dynamics are designed to run, right? But it is running now. It's dysfunctional for us. So now we have to reach out. In an adult world, we need to start reaching out of pleasing and get back into connection with who we are. Now, we'll get into that in a moment. But to the child, this is where we start our codependent experience. Either we're pleasing them, we're fixing them, we're rescuing them, we're caretaking them. Whatever it is that makes them happy and feel good, that makes us feel good, we start doing a lot of. And this is where we get that codependent attachment. So fundamentally, codependency is about the attachment we've developed to somebody else's approval so that we can feel permission to feel love. That's only happened because we feel rejected in our own love. We don't believe or feel or experience in our minds or often outside of us a value for who we are. We only experience that when we do something that other people like. And that's where we get stuck. So we work through attachment. One of the big first steps here is to start reconnecting with our pain. Reconnecting with the shame, reconnecting with the confusion, reconnecting with the anger, reconnecting with the grief that comes up with the broken attachment, that comes up with the rejection we've repeatedly experienced from our caregiver. And a lot of this will come up in sensations in our body with faint or foggy memories about being hurt or rejected or feeling hurt by the primary caregiver. A lot of reasons why this happens is because it happened in a point in time that was nonverbal or pre-verbal to us. We didn't know what to say. We were 2, we were 3. It wasn't very clear. Okay? But the parents' implicit or explicit behaviors that come in from their past, from their wounding, from their programming, have affected us in our own sense of love. Okay? And that's powerful to understand because it helps us go into the concept clearly that this was never our fault. Okay? this also isn't about blaming the parent. Okay, there's a difference here between accountability and blame. Accountability says, you did this thing, I felt this way about it. It's in your yard. You own it. You own the consequences of it, and the consequences are, one of them is I don't like it. I didn't like how it felt, it hurt. Okay? That's accountability. It's putting back the action, behavior, choice, feelings, desires, thoughts, back where they belong, which is the person that did them, felt them, thought them, desired them, chose them, that kind of thing. Blame is you make me feel, and so now we're making them responsible for our emotional reaction. And now we're powerless. See, by holding them accountable for their behavior, their choices, their feelings, and their desires, we become accountable for ours as well. I felt hurt when you did or did not do this, Mom. It's a very powerful statement because now I'm in a relationship with my own emotions that is an allied position. I can be me and stand up for what I feel despite Mom's rejection or acceptance of my complaint. It also is an enforcement of my own personal autonomy, my personal authority, which is Law 1, live your power, here in the 10 laws that I teach. We learn a lot about personal autonomy, personal authority, and occupying our space and ownership. These things empower us to have these kind of active boundaries so that we can really thrive. This also begins to readjust the attachment we have with this other individual because now we're being very deliberate. So, healing attachment, I'll get back to that here. Step 1 is coming back into a relationship with the feelings we have about their behavior. So, if I were working with myself or if I were working with a client, this is how it would look. It's like when you think about what happened, what are the feelings that come up in your body? What are the sensations that show up? Like, I would ask this question. I've asked it to myself. When I think about my mother, how does my body respond? My body becomes numb, not calm, numb. It's like right there. It's just its response. That's its relationship to Mom. And then I can ask it a question. What is that about? What are you trying to tell me with that? Where did that come from? And if I listen, it has to do with a combination of things. See? And it's never going to be just one thing. Usually it's going to be a combination of things. She died from brain cancer a week before my 11th birthday, so she abandoned me. And that's one that my body's like, nah, I don't see that as abandonment anymore. I used to. But now it's more like, nah, brain cancer killed her, and it sucks. But there's something a little younger behind that. It's more like, I was really upset with how Mom publicly humiliated me and accused me of harming someone that it didn't happen. Somebody set me up and it was a bad experience. But she didn't side with me. She sided with them. And so that, even that has some emotion to it. So now I can use my, healing tools on it. I can use the closure technique or other processes on it to bring some closure to that part of me. I don't have an active memory of feeling love from her. See, and that's important because I'm listening to my body. My mind will say, yeah, of course she loved us. She made us breakfast in the morning, and she would ask us about our day after school. And I have no doubt my mom cared about us. I don't have a doubt that there was love there, but I do not feel that. And so that needs to be acknowledged because that's part of the neglect. I didn't feel loved. I felt a lot of anxiety from her towards me and towards life. I think Mom was scared of screwing her children up, and it inhibited her ability to show her own love. And that comes, and we'll relate this back to the studies, this comes back to how she experienced attachment in her childhood. Her mom and dad were not available for her, so she struggled to be available for me. Okay, so When I talk about attachment and healing it, that first step is getting back into that connection with ourselves, validating our feelings, understanding them, respecting those emotions because they're real and they're valid. Okay? They matter. They are an experience, a response or reaction to what you went through. They are not wrong, they are not a burden, and they're not shameful. Even if you feel they are, that's just a feeling. It's just an opinion. It's not the fact, and it's not a truth. So I teach a concept called holding when it comes to this step. We gotta make a space and hold. Make a space for our feelings to be held. This is key to beginning the process of regulation. Okay? There's videos here on the channel that can lead you through that. So that's our first step, is getting reconnected with it and into validation of our emotions. They're real, they're valid, they matter. And there's a whole process to that, including holding, including regulation, including validation, sharing and exposure, things like that. Okay. So the next step here is to begin to understand. I have it written down here. I keep notes because I like to be on target. So I have a lot in my head when I do these videos. So the second step is to start working on getting closure with the grief, anger, resentment, betrayal, sense of abandonment we might feel in connection to the caregiver and their failed ability to meet our needs and our wants, to see us, to recognize us, to be present with us. For me personally, I had to do that with three different individuals in three different ways, because my mother died. That was trauma number one, which is a big one. Death has a permanence to it. You can't reconcile with the permanence. There isn't getting another mother kind of thing. It doesn't happen. It's fundamentally altering. So I had to come to terms with permanence there. I had to come to terms with what is lost. And then the second part of that journey was coming into relationship and closure with what didn't happen in response to her death. My father, the community, and then my future stepmother didn't respond at all to our needs in a way that was appropriate. They did tactile things that were appropriate, like, put us into counseling, into a grief group, things like that. If you're going through grief, you need the time, attention, and love of your parent or your significant other to just be there and validate the loss and allow the brain, allow the nervous system, allow that individual to really connect with themselves. Okay? That didn't happen. Instead, I was told to get over it. And when I had depression and anxiety, which is pretty common when you're being neglected and you're also dealing with grief, I was put into counseling to get fixed. We're going to fix you. This is the onslaught, the beginning that happened in my life around age 12, age 13, where my world suddenly became absorbed in my step-parent's world because of her needs and her pain and things. There's a lot of stuff that happens there we'll be able to go through together here as we go through this. But fundamentally, we have to start reconciling that relationship to the caregiver. And that's going to mean grief. That's going to mean pain. That's going to mean coming out of denial, taking off the rose-colored glasses, getting into an honest understanding and relationship with their behavior and their treatment and what they did and what they did not do. That's going to take time, and it takes patience, and it takes guidance. It takes a calm, reliable structure in which to explode in, to explore in, to shatter in, because abandonment's a sense of shattering, and then there's a grief that goes through it, and then we become reconciled, though, as we reach closure with who they are, with what didn't happen. And in this process, we also become reclamated to ourselves. That means we come back together in us, and we begin to know us. We begin to see where we are in relationship to them. We know ourselves more and more on an individual level. This kind of healing is profound because it's dealing with the attachment trauma or abandonment wound that's fundamental with most of us that deal with codependency. This is where we are taking that first level of healing where we're reconnecting and beginning to bring comfort and regulation to our pain, to our grief, and our feelings about what happened in number 2 with our parents. So these are in tandem with each other. And now we get to step number 3, and this is where we begin to build a reliable and safe, secure attachment to someone else too. But this is trick, because we've got to do it with ourselves as well. So as we're responding with kindness and love towards ourselves in step numbers 1 and 2, we start to share our journey with others that have proven themselves to be safe. And that creates an experience, a therapeutic connection. It's like, wow, connection can be safe. And as we build on that connection, we begin to see that it's repetitively safe and reliable for us. We begin to feel secure and stable in it. Okay? That step allows us to then open up to the reality that we can have stable connections and we know how to do it. See? This combats the all or nothing thinking concept of everybody's trustworthy or nobody's trustworthy. It puts us into the gray zone that there are untrustworthy and unsafe people, and there are trustworthy, safe people, and I can reliably detect the difference between them and then choose safe, reliable people. That's step number 4, is you're able to start thriving in relationship, both platonically, romantically, intimately, sexually, whatever it might be. So healing attachment pain and attachment trauma is basically the entire process of exiting codependency. And I designed the 10 laws to help us have a structure we could call to and go, oh, I know what I need to do here. Oh, I know what I need to learn more about here. Oh, I know what I have to be aware of over there. So that this whole process from this anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment moves into building secure attachment with the right people. This pretty much eliminates codependency. Okay? It also, deeply within us, we're basically reconciling our relationship with love from shame to desired, to belonging. Not just for other people, and this is so critical, for yourself with yourself. You like your love. You like how you show up in the world. You like you. Now, I'm not saying love. It starts with like. Law 5, embrace you. The second principle you explore in that love within the foundation course. First one, self-nurture. The second one, learning to like yourself. Like breeds love. Okay. So that's today's video on attachment and how it plays a role in codependency. It's very, very, packed in. Check out the links below to expand your awareness beyond what I've taught here. If you're ready to break through and thrive beyond your codependency, just click the link below. Take the course, enroll. It's in pilot mode right now. Well, it will be till April 2nd, so you can get in at a discounted price. If you're watching this post April 2nd, go down there, check it out. And if you got questions, just ask them below. Join me on my Facebook group, the link's below. Get your own blueprint on the 10 laws and how they work for you. And we'll see you in the next video, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.